Hey guys, it's Amber from NotableInk.com back with another Altenew release for February 2020. This here is their new cutting mat. It's two-sided, so I'll show you the other side in a minute. And it's huge. It's 22 by 16 and it's really cool because at the top and on the right side it has a 0 center measuring guide, and then on the left and the bottom it's your typical 0 to 16 or 0 to 22 measurement. In the center, you have two templates for an A2 size card, so either horizontal or portrait, and then you also have a 12 by 12 template as well if you're a scrapbooker. Here on the other side, you have the metric system, and so this is done by centimeters, and so depending upon which country you're in, you could use either side. And that side was a light gray. So we're going to jump right into the cards. So I'm starting off with the Watercolor Roses stamp set. And if these roses look familiar to you, it's because they're very similar to the stencil that they put out. What was it? I think it was Rose Bouquet was the name of it. I'll have the stencil linked down below so that you guys can see it for reference. But the style of the roses is the same. So what I'm doing here is I'm inking up my stamp with Coral Bliss, and then I'm lightly spritzing it with a water and Perfect Pearls mixture. And so my first stamping, there was too much water. I think I spritzed it 3 times. The second time I only spritzed it twice. That was much better. Now the reason I put the white silicone mat underneath is because I thought I was just going to put the ink on the mat and then pick it up with the stamp, but I changed my mind, just inked up the stamp and sprayed it. So here I have Sunkissed. I also used Orange Cream and Pink Pearl. Those were the 4 colors that I used. Here I'm going to do the leaves with Olive, and I stamped a whole bunch of those. I'm not going to show you all the stamping because it's the same. Ink it up, spritz a couple times from pretty far away so it doesn't get too juicy, and then stamp. Here I have the Diamond Pattern Play background stamp, and I've inked that up with Pink Pearl. I'm just going to plop my A2 card down on it and get that stamped. And then I have the Believe stamp, which is also from Watercolor Roses, and I'm stamping that on vellum with Stazon Piano Black Pigment Ink. That's my preferred ink for stamping on vellum because even though it's a pigment, it dries really quickly and it's great for your non-porous surfaces. So here I have my roses and my leaves arranged, and what I've done is temporarily adhered them to just a circular white die cut. I just cut it with my circle stacking dies, and that just gave me a frame of reference to create a circular pattern with my roses and my leaves there, and also gave me something to stick them to. So then I'm going to go ahead and pop up some of the roses. So some of them I adhere directly to the cardstock. Other ones I popped up with some foam tape. I left one rose to put it on top of the vellum strip because I thought that might look nice. And then I'll also use some small foam squares to pop up some of the leaves. I'm going to trim this out because there's no reason for you to see me adhering everything down. Once it was adhered on the front, I just folded the vellum around and I'll just adhere that with some washi tape. And then to embellish the little circles that are in between those diamonds, I'm going to use Nuvo Crystal Drops in Oyster Gray. I never usually do this directly on the card because I usually will smear it or just mess it up. So you can see I did my first one over there on cardstock just to get out any air bubbles from the bottle so it just doesn't like splat all over. And here is a close-up of all of that cool texture that you get with this faux watercolor technique, and there's the finished card. Moving on to the next card, I have a piece of hot press watercolor paper, and I'm going to gold heat emboss Exotic Garden stamp set on the bottom of this card. So this is a really large floral bouquet, and so it's great if you're someone who doesn't like to mask. This is a one and done kind of stamp. Once that's done, I'm going to start watercoloring, and I have a mop brush here. This is a natural hair mop brush, and I've watered down Cool Summer Night, which is from the new Altenew Artist Watercolor 24 pan set. Sorry, that was a long name. So I've just watered it down a whole bunch because I thought what I wanted was a soft background. So I am not great with the watercolor backgrounds. I tend to overwork things, so I thought I would just keep it soft, but In the end, if you guys follow me, I don't do a lot of soft color cards. My cards are usually really bold. And so you can see like it's already getting darker. I don't know what it is about the soft pastel colors. They like make me uncomfortable. They don't look right to me. I love it on other people's cards, but on my cards, it just doesn't do it for me. So if you like this look, stop here, but you can see I've already added more pigment to my little palette over there, and we're gonna make it super dark. So I'll just keep adding color. I think that in the end, I ended up adding about 3 layers. So this is gonna get darker and darker, and I just kept adding on top of each other. So at no time when I was doing this background did I let it completely dry. It was always still a little bit damp. And like I said, this is a mop brush, so it holds a lot of water. It holds a lot of pigment. And so the paper was pretty wet. So that was helpful as I continued adding color, because if it completely dries and you come back in with more pigment, then you might get some of those hard edges. But you can see that the paper's wet because you can see how nicely that those pigments just kind of feather out when you add it to this area up here. So we're just going to keep adding darker color, and then I will have it fade out at the top. So once I get all those kind of fiddly areas done, I'll just wet my brush just a little bit more and just bring that up to the top there. And that still wasn't dark enough for me, so I just kept adding more until I was happy. And I think I actually took out some of the footage of me continuing to add more and more dark color. So here for the leaves, I didn't show all the leaves. This color is Tropical Forest, which is my favorite set of greens because it's yellow green. It has the olive and the moss in that color family. And I'm just doing a single layer, and then I do come back in and add a little bit darker color later on. And I don't have that on film, but it's going to be the same thing that I do with this flower. So with this flower, I have a really watered down version of Tea Party. Here you can see I added more pigment to that mixture that I had in my tray. I'm going to let this dry just a tiny little bit. Then I add even more pigment, and I'm going to come in with a darker color. So again, at no time is it completely dry. I let it dry just a little bit and soak in, but it's not completely dry as I'm adding my additional layers. So I'm going to do the same thing with this lily here, and then I'm not going to show the other flowers because I really did do them the exact same way. So just really simple watercolor. So I'm using the Hello and Hugs die here. This is the Hello die, and this is the center part of the die. I went ahead and cut it out of my watercolor piece at the top, and then I cut the shadow with white cardstock. I'm going to stack those up, and I'll put it right over top of the negative space that I have in the card there. So you'll never know that it was cut out of there. But this just allows me, with the shadow, the white shadow, it allows the sentiment to stand out more, but it also looks cohesive because you've used that exact piece of your cardstock already, your watercolor cardstock. Here's a close-up of the card, and I'm really digging the dark indigo background. It makes me super happy, and then the light watercoloring of the florals. On to the next card. So here, I'm still trying to push myself and do light colors. So this card did end up staying pretty light. So basically, I'm watering down Tea Party, and I'm also watering down Fall Harvest. Those will be the only 2 colors used. And what I've done is I've cut some masks out of masking paper using the dies of the New Beginnings stamp set. And I've kind of just placed those all over the card to create like a background pattern. And I think I used 3 different images and cut 2 of each of them. So I'm just creating some really simple stripes using that same mop brush, trying to keep my stripes really light. I alternated the pink and yellow lines. I wasn't real concerned about the lines being particularly straight or all the same size. You can see there's a difference in the width of the lines from one to the next. And here I'm just going to peel off my masking paper. Now that everything is still wet, I was worried that if I left the masking paper on for everything to dry, that it might stick too much. I couldn't really feel any residual like glue residue from the masking, but I went ahead and used an adhesive eraser just in case because I wanted to emboss the images and I didn't want that to stick to any, leftover goo. And I kind of wish I hadn't embossed. I wish I had done the flowers in black because it makes me really uncomfortable that there's not high contrast in this card. I don't know, it's just not me. So to be a little bit different, I put my sequins on vertically. Not my favorite card, you guys, but you'll have to let me know what you think down below. Moving on to the next card, I'm going to emboss a leaf cluster from the Watercolor Roses set, and we're going to end up doing some grunge watercolor here, and that wasn't planned. I'm going to use the Tropical Forest. This card was kind of ridiculous. Okay, so I have a really hard time with like messy. Like a really hard time. So I thought, okay, well, let me add a little more structure to the smooshing by using like, you know, the acetate that you see people use. No, whatever. This was a disaster. It didn't look good at all. So I just kind of keep adding color to this. So then I decided, okay, let me just pick that up and I'll color the whole thing. Like just having some splatters. You're obviously not going to see the leaves. So I was going to add more color to that anyway. But no, I just end up painting this whole thing just like completely green. You can see it's really light. And then I'm going to add another layer of this. So I'm kind of doing a little bit wet. It's a little bit of a dry brush stroke kind of look. So I'm trying to keep it a little more organic looking, having some brush strokes in there and stuff. And I like the color of this so much more. It's vibrant. I like it. So then I decide I'm going to add some Cool Summer Night. Now, my panel's not dry. So I'm flicking this on and it's just kind of like oozing out, right? If your panel was dry, then those would be crisp droplets. But I didn't let it dry because I didn't want to wait. So then I decided, okay, well, I'll just dry ink brush that, right? So you can see that my bristles are pretty dry. They're flailing out. And then I decided, okay, I like the look of that. I'll add more Cool Summer Night. This is a darker mixture of it, and I'll just swipe that along. And then I added some more green, I think, and then here we are to the finished card. And you can see it dried back quite a bit. So I decided to cut about 1 inch of the panel out at kind of near the bottom so that I could have my sentiment. I've glued on just a black strip of cardstock, and I'm going to get these two pieces adhered. I didn't pop anything up. I'm just adhering it directly to the card. And that will finish off this card. So here you can see all the lovely texture from the watercolor. I tried to wipe as much of it off of the embossing as possible, but you can see it did kind of get a little distressed looking, and I really like that. Now that blue card all the way on the far left, I really just stamped the largest solid image in kind of like a quilt type pattern, almost like a bricklaying technique, and then I just left it blank in the center, didn't use any of the other stamps, and then added a bloom from New Beginnings and a sentiment from there as well on vellum. I hope that you guys enjoyed these cards today. If you did, be sure to hit that like and subscribe button down below if you're not already subscribed. And I will be back soon with more inspiration. Thanks so much to Altenew for inviting me to the hop.